million-dollar views, and million-dollar lifestyle. Today we're in Queenstown, the most expensive city in New Zealand. We'll take you into a house with a price tag of $1 million US. And it's not just about the house, it's about the life that comes with it. Dream or overpriced? Share your thoughts in the comments. This is New Zealand. We show you the real picture of life here. Costs, jobs, salaries, immigration, and so on. Hit subscribe and join us. Welcome! Hi everyone, this is Dennis from New Zealand, and today, as people ask me many times, I'm inviting you over to my place. I'll show you how a New Zealand house is set up. It's going to be a bit unusual, but I'll explain that a little bit later. For those who don't remember or don't know, I live in the city of Queenstown, which is on the South Island of New Zealand in an area called Jack's Point. It's an amazing, very beautiful neighborhood. And in this episode, I'll show you what the housing itself is like. The house is located in a kind of small cul-de-sac, let's say, on a closed-off street. So there's no traffic, which means it's quiet and peaceful. Actually, the whole area is pretty quiet and peaceful. There aren't many cars here, not too many people yet, so the infrastructure is also still quite limited. And basically, in terms of entertainment, there's a children's playground, sports fields, also a small golf club, a cafe, the golf training course itself, and that's probably about it. They're planning to build a yoga studio in the same golf club, so for all other entertainment, shopping and so on, we go to other neighborhoods. It's about a 10 to 15 minute drive by car. Jack Point is also interesting because it has a certain style. Everything here is done in a unified style. There's a specific design code here that everyone who builds a house has to follow. So before you can build a house here, you first need to get it approved by the local administration, by the local community. Only after the entire design is approved can you move on to the construction stage, working directly with the city council and so on. In other words, you get permission to build only after all this beauty's been approved, in fact by your neighbors. So all the houses are more or less in the same style. I'm not even sure how to describe it. Most often it's wooden siding and dark roofs. It looks really cool, and walking around this neighborhood is just pure pleasure. So this is what the backyard looks like. Large windows and of course a trampoline. A must-have thing, and we got it from previous tenants. They didn't take it with them. It's the dream of many New Zealanders that their kids have a trampoline. Our little one is still a bit afraid to jump on it, but in general, he likes it too. Interestingly, there's actually a path that runs right through the backyard, at the back. So basically, people do walk here. And as you can see, the fence isn't big. It's a kind of fake one, and actually you can see everything. For people where I'm from, Russia, this is often very unusual, maybe even uncomfortable. But we've got used to it and don't pay any attention to it at all. And the people who walk by also don't pay attention to what's happening in other houses. But I am a curious young man, so when I go for a walk sometimes, just out of curiosity, I may still look into other houses a bit, just peeking in, but of course carefully. And of course if someone's there I don't stare at them. That's why you still need to get used to the lifestyle here. As you can see, there aren't any big fences here, and that's because basically the local community won't allow you to build a big fence. Everything has to look very nice and fit the overall style. And at best, you'll have something like this, either a hedge or maybe some stone walls, nicely laid out with stones. And from the front yard, you can see beautiful views of the mountains and the golf courses that are up on the hills. Alright, let's go take a walk inside the house. The house starts with a small entryway. What's typical is that it's very rare to find an entryway in New Zealand homes where you can hang your jackets. In other words, it's very uncommon to have something built in like we often do in Russia. So you have to figure it out and improvise. There's also a small room by the entrance, which people use differently. Some as an office for work or study. For example, in our case, it's a playroom for the child. There's enough space here for him to keep all his toys. It's actually quite surprising that our child likes to keep things tidy. He cleans up like this all by himself. He enjoys organizing everything, and every day he tidies up together with us. By the way, we bought a little life hack, a small sandbox. It opens up and there's sand inside. The child loves to dig around in the sand. Alright, let's move on. And here we have the pride of our home, the living room. Let's start with the kitchen area. By the way, the house runs on gas, and there's even gas heating, but I'll show you later how it's set up. Up above, there are gas heating vents, which are a must-have, and there's also this nice island, but we also have a heat pump for extra heating. And on one side, we have beautiful views opening up to the Remarkables, to the mountains. Right now, they're a bit covered by clouds, so you can't see everything, not all the peaks, but usually it's very beautiful. And in fact, these are the mountains where people go snowboarding and skiing. There are large, spacious windows everywhere, high ceilings, and there's a fireplace, though it's gas, so it has its own specifics, but it adds coziness, especially on rather chilly winter evenings. And these are the kinds of views you get in the other direction. I can give you a mini room tour of the house for the cat/dog/child, and so on. A tiny entryway, a tiny mouse has hanged itself, and a tiny room. That's it, thanks for watching my channel. Let's move on. There's also an opening in the ceiling here. This is where the hot air comes in, which is heated by gas. Here's the laundry room, the doors open, and there's a washing machine and all that kind of stuff inside. I don't think you're interested in my dirty underwear. There's a window like this for light. It's natural daylight coming in. There's a heating control system, so you can, well, schedule it for a specific date and time, set when it turns on and off, to what temperature it will heat, and also control it by separate zones or rooms. Alright, let's go to the first room. The first room is the master bedroom. It's called the master bedroom because it has its own private bathroom. Hello, that's me. There's a shower cabin here, and there's a bathtub. And here we have, hooray, heated floors. It's very comfortable. And basically a normal human-sized bedroom. Which, damn, is pretty rare to find such decent bedrooms in New Zealand. Well, actually, not that rare, okay, but in rental housing it's probably rare. And in those houses that people buy for themselves, that's pretty normal. From here, you also get views of the Remarkables. It's quite nice. So, let's move on to the next room. This is the second bedroom. But actually, this is the holy of holies, my home office. Oh, by the way, there's a built-in closet here too. Built-in closets are popular in New Zealand. They're everywhere. And here we go. This is my home office. Ta-da! Yep, there's a ton of equipment here to shoot interesting videos for you. So this bedroom, which I've converted into an office, is a bit smaller. I think it'll be good to open the window, to allow in and breathe some fresh air. The bedroom is a bit smaller, but still a decent size overall. So you can easily fit a bed of any size here and so on. Alright, let's move on. Behind this door, we have another bathroom, and this one actually has a bathtub. There's a real bathtub in the bathroom. Believe me, having 2 bathrooms in a house in New Zealand is something totally unexpected and incredible. And there's heated floor as well. Guys, it's like a dream. Alright, let's move on to the last room. That's the garage. It's a mess. I haven't cleaned up anything there yet. But in the last room, we have a modest guest room, which has already hosted a bunch of our friends who are always coming over to visit us. And even from here, there's just a little bit of a mountain view. Well, that's it. 3 bedrooms, a kid's nook, 2 bathrooms. A typical nice New Zealand house. How to find a place like this one. In New Zealand, there are several websites where rental listings are posted. Realestate.co.nz and trademe.co.nz are the main sites. Basically, we search there because agents are usually useless. But not always, and that actually worked in our favor at one point. So I was constantly, every day, monitoring all the listings looking for decent, reasonable houses. We wanted to find a truly high-quality, nice, cool house with interesting views and a pleasant atmosphere, so it would be enjoyable to be here. Not just to live there, but so that when you walk in you feel, wow, this is amazing. And we managed to do it, but we were looking for such place for quite long, several months. I scrolled through listings and applied to everyone that more or less suited us, but it was very hard for us to even be considered, because the competition is tough. A lot of people are coming from Auckland, many remote workers have moved here, and many of them don't have kids. Families without children are given preference, as well as those without pets. That's why at first, we didn't even mention our pets. We only brought it up later, when we were negotiating. But in the end, I pestered everyone, and one of the agents who had already shown us several houses, I kept asking her, "So, when is it? What's going on? Are there any other options?" She said, "Yes." Right now, there's another option that just came up. I haven't even listed it. Some acquaintances are going to rent out their house. I looked up the address and immediately said, that's it, we'll take it. We viewed and of course agreed right away and rented this house. Beautiful. This kind of place rents for 750 New Zealand dollars a week. But I think they undersold it because now for 750, you can only rent houses here that are much worse, much more modest. Our house is really great after all, and it's very unusual. Let's just say it's not your typical New Zealand house. To buy a place like this would cost about 1.5 million New Zealand dollars. Well, specifically in this area, because the neighborhood is great, it's not cheap, the neighbors are wonderful, and in general everyone here is quite well off, so it's really worth it. In fact, there are very few rentals in this area because most of the time people here live in their own homes. We were lucky, and the owners who are currently renting this place to us actually bought this house specifically to rent it out at the time, but with the idea that maybe one day they would move here themselves, or maybe they won't, especially if we end up buying this house from them someday. The owners bought this house with the intention of renting it out. They liked that it was clear in advance what the views would be because the neighboring houses had already been built and the views were already established. Nobody wants to buy a house and then a year later someone starts building another one right in front of it and your views disappear. Here everything was clear from the start, and the views are truly stunning, of course. Everything here is really well set up. A house like this is rented out completely empty. Okay, not completely. Usually they leave a refrigerator, sometimes a washing machine. In our case, it was only the refrigerator. And of course, there are all the appliances like the stove, for example, sinks and so on. But everything else, you either have to bring your own or buy. As I briefly mentioned, this is not a typical New Zealand home. This is a good New Zealand home, since both the neighborhood and the building itself are nice. But there are flaws even here. For example, the windows. You'd think it's double glazing, everything seems fine, but apparently the quality of the window metal work isn't the best, so it's still quite cold here. So if we don't turn on any heaters at night, and it's say 5 degrees outside, the temperature inside will drop to 13 degrees if we don't turn anything on. But actually, we're more or less used to it, and we like sleeping in the fresh air, so to speak. But in the morning, I just turn on the central heating, and it quickly warms up the whole house to the temperature we need in about 15 minutes. But it also airs out pretty quickly, because as you can see, there are a lot of windows, and none of them are particularly good in terms of thermal insulation. In fact, apparently, they're very thermally conductive. Also, sometimes some condensation forms on them. So there are these kinds of flaws. Regarding the heating, yes, there is central heating, which is also not a completely typical situation, but it does happen fairly regularly. It's all gas-powered. Gas costs money. For electricity, during the winter months, my heating expenses for electricity went up to, I think, up to $300. And for gas, it was about the same, up to $300 as well. But our hot water and stove run on gas, as well as all the heating. So if you don't use it too often like we do now, we rarely turn on the heating these days because it's warm enough. Even when it's around 10 to 15 degrees at night and during the day, it's still comfortable and we don't need it. The sun heats things up through the windows, and basically we don't need it any warmer. But friends who come to visit us, of course, many of them felt cold because they said it was still chilly for them. They like it to be around 20 degrees. For us, 20 degrees at home is very hot. It's actually uncomfortable. That's how our bodies have adapted. That's pretty much how we live. That's the kind of tour it was. I hope you enjoyed it. It's almost like you visited me at home. I've never had several hundred, or maybe if I'm lucky and you give enough likes, thousands of guests at once. So, you could say I'm letting you into my home, and this is a bit of a personal video, and I wanted to show and explain that housing in New Zealand isn't necessarily bad or damp, as many of you have probably heard. Yes, there are many bad houses. But there are also properties of quite good quality. You just need to make an effort and search properly. So don't go anywhere, stay subscribed to my channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss new videos. Thank you all for your attention.